All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We're putting together a little video to talk about building wealth through real estate and some of the benefits as to investing in real estate and having some properties or having some rental properties. So before we start, I want to introduce myself just in case if you don't know who I am. My name is Joey Finrow, and I'm a real estate agent in Orange County. And my loan partner, Al, said he's with us. Al, you are a loan officer, and where are you at again?
Cross Country Mortgage. I'm in South Orange County as well.
Okay, perfect. And so we're going to put together more of a mastermind video talking about building wealth through real estate. So one of the first things, and this will be more conversational, kind of like a podcast, if you will. But one of the first points that I'd like us to talk about is the average net worth compared to a renter versus a homeowner. And so there's been a couple stats that I've seen around this, and the most accurate one that I saw a couple years ago, and this is for United States as a whole, that a renter's average net worth last year was right around $5,500 to $5,800, and then the average net worth of a homeowner was $328,000. So that's one of the first signs that I was like, you know what? Real estate, that's something to at least consider and to dive into a little bit more. Al, have you heard those stats before, and are those fairly accurate to what you're commonly used to?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of those stats over the last few years too. The most recent one I saw was the average net worth of a homeowner versus a renter is 37 times higher.
Jeez.
But at the time they hit retirement age, which is, it's insane. I mean, it's a difference of, I think, $13,000 versus $500,000.
Right.
Crazy numbers.
Crazy. Yeah, no, that's crazy. And literally just by owning your home and paying the mortgage.
Yeah. The stats we're talking about are just primary residence, not like multiple rental properties and all the other fun stuff.
Right. What do you think keeps people from buying, a home, like somebody our age? What do you think keep stopping them, especially since you're on the lending side? You might see this maybe more than I do, keeping people renting longer versus just buying a property. Is it the down payment, or is it that the payment per month is slightly higher? What are you seeing?
That's a great question. So here's what I found. So I've been lending for 11 years in Orange County. We've helped hundreds and thousands of families purchase and refinance. So I'm blessed. I get to see people's loan applications every day. I can see their spending habits, their savings patterns, their income levels, their credit worthiness, all kinds of fun stuff. And I like to pay attention to patterns. And so what I've noticed is generally those, and I think if we're going to talk about renters versus buyers, a lot of first-time home buyers, there's the obvious objections, which is, hey, we travel a lot. We're a single person. I work a ton and I'm at home a week out of the month. And so I don't see the need to purchase and plant my seeds, quote unquote. That's obviously a justifiable reason, but we're talking a couple of percent of the actual prospective home buyer, first-time buyers that actually operate that way. So let's just call it less than 10% have a justifiable need not to purchase. For the vast majority of us, to your point, like those in our age group, we're in the millennial age group, and we've got I've got a couple kids. I know you don't yet, but you're married. I'm sure that's going to be coming pretty soon. And we plant our seeds in a specific location. So for the families that are like, hey, we don't move a lot, we're planting seeds in Southern California or anywhere else in the U.S. What I tend to find is three major objections. One, we don't have enough money to put down.
Yep.
Two, we have credit challenges. Yeah. And we don't know what our eligibility looks like based off of our credit, which we can obviously talk a little bit more about. And then to your point, the last one was, well, we want to buy, but it looks like the price that we want to buy at, we could rent for $300 or $400 or $500 a month cheaper than what we could purchase at. And I actually do use a simple math problem for clients. I love numbers. That's why I love lending. Numbers don't lie, right? Very simple. Show them the math problem. They can make the decision themselves. So if I may, I'd love to kind of share that perspective for a second.
Sure.
And so let's just talk about, what do you think an average 2-bedroom, 1.5, two bathrooms in Orange County would rent for on average right now, you think?
Oh, would rent for?
Yeah.
Roughly 22 to 2400, depending on
Cool.
where it is. But that's
That's
a
what I
good
figured too,
estimate.
like mid to, low to mid 200s or $2,000
Mhm.
monthly price point. If you were to purchase that same property, you're mortgage with a low down payment option. So I'm going to take a 20% down option out of the equation because a lot of people these days don't buy with 20% down.
Right.
That's the myth. You have got to have 20% put down, but that's not the truth. So
Right.
a lot of first time homebuyers will get into the market at 3-5% down, somewhere in that range. At that range with monthly HOA dues and everything out the door, you're probably looking at about a $3,000
Yeah,
payment.
that's right.
2,400 bucks a month in rent compared to a $3,000 payment. A lot of buyers will go, like, why would I do this? Right? Aside from the retirement fact that you're going to retire with a significantly higher net worth,
For
you
sure.
have to be able to sustain that payment for the next few years to get you to that point. So it's a reasonable topic to discuss, and it's a reasonable excuse, and not even an excuse, but it's a reasonable concern that
It's
prospective homebuyers
factor.
would have. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like my
And
payment's gonna be 100 bucks
one of the
higher.
things that I've because I see that too is we're working with a client who's in that situation, and one thing that I say to them in that situation is in the last 5 years that you've been renting, has your rent stayed the same or has it gone up? And I mean, everybody that I've worked with and friends and family as well, the rent's gone up,
Mhm.
significantly. And it's not uncommon in that price range, even that low price range of rent between 22 to $2,500 for it to go up 100 to two, or I mean, I have two clients just last or this year that we were talking about buying. Their rent went up when they renewed it $300 in that price range.
Wow.
It wasn't like a $5,000 a
That's
month
insane.
lease. It
Yeah.
was in the low to mid twos. And so knowing that, one thing that I always say is yes, when you buy right now, it's going to be $400 to $600 more per month.
Yeah.
But your payment, I'm sure this is exactly where you were going with this, your payment per month is fixed.
Mhm.
And I always say, how long do you think it's going to take if there's a $300 to $600 gap in between renting and buying? How long do you think it's going to take before your rent goes to where your mortgage would be? And in some cases, it could be less than 5 years.
Yeah. So I've been saying, and I've been telling buyers this for 9 years now,
Right?
that rents, and let's just isolate Orange County for a sec. Rents are about 2 to 2.5 years behind the mortgage payment.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
every time I've said that and I've reanalyzed it, that's been accurate.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. It's like within 2 to 2.5 years, your rent, to your point, your rent's gonna be the same as your mortgage payment. But what about the next 5 years after that?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So the mortgage,
And
most
that
clients will purchase today with a 30-year fixed loan. And so that payment, barring your property taxes, your insurance shifting, which is maybe 10 bucks a month, if that, if they're raising your taxes,
right.
you're talking about your mortgage payment staying roughly the same or within a couple percent variation of that payment for the next 30 years.
For sure.
Right? That's a huge swing. Great point.
Right. No, exactly. And so those are the conversations that I'm having on my end, and I know that you are having as well. But that's one of the biggest reasons that's keeping it sounds like our clients from making that that initial large step
Mhm.
from buying their first property and living in it. But if you're thinking long term, if you know that you could either live or keep the home for 5+ years, as far as the future benefit. And I mean, I've never heard of somebody after 30 years, and I'm sure you found this as well, after 30 years and their last mortgage payment, they paid it. I've never met somebody that said, you know what, I wish I didn't buy that house. It's like you're going to be so glad that you did. It's paid off. And if you choose to rent it out or just keep it house free, besides taxes and insurance and potentially HOA, but
Mhm.
the principal and interest is paid off, and so um, that's one of the reasons why I feel like building your wealth through real estate is something to consider. Simply just by owning the property that you are living in. And I think something else to consider too, why one should even consider building wealth through real estate, even if it's again just owning your property, is that you never know when you need to be in a position when you need to have access to capital, to cash, to
Mhm.
equity. Let's say your kids want to go to college, or if one of your family members is having just a family emergency and there's medical bills, to
Mhm.
have access to something outside of just your retirement, it gives you more options to where you don't have to panic, if you will.
Yeah, like to your point, Joey, look at right now. We're shooting this video and it's in the middle of May of 2020, and we're in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic. Like, look at how many families right now are struggling because of unemployment. And to your point, those that have equity in their properties and and these aren't people that have bought in the last 12 to 18
Right.
months. Like, it takes a few years to build equity, but those that have invested over the last 5, 6, 7 years, they're in a position where they can pull some equity out of their homes to pay their expenses because they may have lost a job for 12 months.
100%.
Most Americans that don't have homes to be able to leverage, they're stuck. They're in tough spots right now. So that's a huge piece. Um,
Yeah, and not only that, but if you again, let's say in 30 years, 40 years, whenever we decide to retire, if I was
we're
retiring,
never retiring.
I know, I know exactly. But if we did, if I was retiring and COVID-19 happened again, this my 401k, my other retirement accounts, they're generally down right now.
Mhm.
And so what would it do if my only source of retirement is just in retirement accounts with
Yeah.
401k, Roth
Well, I
IRA,
see that we have clients now that are like looking at refinancing or purchasing. We see their asset statements.
right?
And I mean, generally right now, you're pretty well protected in the market, equities market, as long as you don't pull money out and go to cash. Unless you're about 12 to 18 months away from retirement, you're okay. Like, we're going to recover.
Correct.
But to your point, like, that, the last thing you want to do is touch your retirement account to live.
Right. Well,
Right.
but what if you already retired 6 months ago? So that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. I was like, what if having real estate a part of your portfolio
Right.
would help mitigate future issues that could arise. And if I was retiring years down the road and something similar like this happened, to where I could stop pulling as much or the least amount from my retirement accounts and potentially have other sources of income outside of this, I think would just give myself and my family the ability to make our livelihood last as long as possible. And going back on again, building wealth through real estate, I think I had a client, actually, he bought a property in 2013 for $240,000, and him and his wife bought another property and rented out the one that they bought in 2013, and they actually turned that into a rental property.
Awesome.
And that property went from he bought it at 240, and now it's worth 360 to 370 right now.
Wow.
And they're renting it out, and they're just under $300 per month cash flow positive. And I was thinking, I was like, you know what? It would be not only everything we're talking about retirement, but think of college education and college tuition. How long would that take one to save $120,000 for a 529 account versus, and not to say that you shouldn't do that, but what if I could also get there
Mhm.
by having a property per kid, buying it and keeping it as a rental,
Yeah.
and just renting it out as long as it was cash flow positive, meaning that there was income after paying off all the expenses to the property.
Right.
And again, he has been raising the rent between $75 to $100 per year.
Yeah. Rightfully so. I mean, he's the landlord. He can do that.
Exactly. So I think that there's so many ways to do this without being a millionaire. I think that that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that you need to have a crap load of money in order to do this. And at that time, so when my client bought that for 240,000, he put 5% down. That was, I believe that was at 9,000, 10,000, or I think it was 15 or 18,000. It was under 20,000 is what he put down. He didn't have 50 to 100,000. He put $20,000.
So, if I may, so I had a financial planner of mine impart some wisdom on me a few years ago, and I've used this as for example cases a lot in the last handful of years, and
Okay.
it drives this point home so well. So if I may, I'd like to just show that example real quick.
Yeah, please do it.
So in that dynamic, they put in about $13,000 down, give or take, was the down payment, 5%, 280 grand. And then you said, how long did they own it before they figured out that their value went up to about 370, 380,000?
It's worth that, right? I think we talked about this about 6 months ago.
Cool. And
So
when
it
did
was
they
like
buy? You said
7 years.
2013?
Yeah, he bought in 2013.
Sweet. So 7 years.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll call it. So let's take a look. So $13,000. They probably spent about $6,000 or $7,000 in closing costs. So
Right.
let's just say they threw in 20 grand all in to buy that house. They made the payments just as they would if they'd rented a property for the last 7 years. Like, they're probably not living rent free anywhere had they not purchased. So let's just assume that they put in $20,000, and in a matter of 7 years, they walked away with an additional $100,000 in equity. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So let's quantify this in numbers. And for anybody watching this video, I want you to take these numbers and talk to your financial planner, or if you're a financial planner watching this video, I'm sure at the end of this, you're going to agree with me at some level. So if you take $20,000 divided by $100,000, you're talking about roughly a 500% ROI in 7 years.
Cash on cash. Yeah.
Cash on cash return. So you invested $20,000, and in 7 years, you could sell the house and walk away with $120,000 cash.
Plus the rental income, which is a little bit, but plus the rental income.
And let's just take that. Let's just say that somebody watching this video doesn't even want to be a landlord. They're like, look, I don't want to deal with that stuff, because I have clients like, look, I don't want to deal with being a landlord. That's fine. Let's just look at it. One property, you buy it, put $20,000 into it. 7 years later, you sell. You walked away and you increased your cash by 500%. Cool. Now check this out. The reason that the cash went up 500% is because you only invested $20,000. But how much was that house worth? Well, it was worth $280,000 before. So in a matter of 7 years, they really only gained $100,000 in equity on a $280,000 property, which is about 35%.
It was 240.
240. Oh, wow. Even better. Okay. So let's say 240,000. That's about 40%. Double check. Yeah, about 41% return in a 7-year period. Now, that's not stellar numbers. That's about average. So if you look at that over a 7-year period, that's a 6% rate of return annually. Cool. Any wealth manager, financial planner, or stockbroker will tell you a 6% ROI invested in the equities market when you average it over a 10-year run is pretty darn realistic, right? A lot of them will shoot for a 7-year target, a 7% annual return, which means you could double your money every 10 years. That's about average in the equities market if you scale it over a 30-year time frame. We're talking about the same numbers in real estate. Here's the difference though. In the equities market, to get that same $100,000 return over 7 years, you would have had to invest not $20,000, but $240,000. So what real estate allows you to do through financing is leverage your money to get a much higher return. It's like calling your stockbroker and saying, hey, listen, I want to give you $50,000 to invest, but I want you to invest it as though I just gave you $500,000. So I want the returns of investing $500,000 versus 50 grand. They're going to be like, Al, you're smoking something and I want some of it. That's not possible, but real estate allows you the leverage to be able to do that. And that's one of the key pieces that is left out, I think, often.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people aren't talking about. You know, it's like, because what you're saying, just to reiterate that, is that client of mine, when he bought that for $240,000, he put 20% down and he's getting a return.
20,000.
Excuse me, 20,000.
Yeah.
20,000 all out the door with closing costs, down payment. And he's getting appreciation on the $240,000, not on the $20,000.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between real estate and just other investments, which you definitely should consider, and which we consider. We talk about this all the time.
Oh yeah.
But I think that is the reason why the average net worth of a homeowner versus a renter is so drastically different, because we're getting a return on money that we borrowed from the bank. And especially where rates are today, I mean, you know, we're in the low 3%.
Basically free.
It's
the cost of inflation is about 3% annually,
Exactly.
3 to 3.5% annualized. To your point, rates right now are about 3.25%, maybe 3.5% on a bad day for a 30-year fix. So you're basically borrowing money for free, and you're able to leverage that to get a return back in your own pocket.
Exactly. And I think this also, it's one of the things why I get so excited. We both get very excited about this. And it's a good option to have. I think what we want to leave people watching this with is make real estate a part of your portfolio.
Right.
Don't have it be your only source of retirement, but I think it's a great idea to make it at least a part of your retirement.
Mhm.
And I think one way to start is buy a property. It doesn't have to be your dream home. Buy a property that you can afford, live in it, and then over 5 years or so, go buy another one, and rent out that one, and just have one. That's okay. Your family's future is going to look dramatically different if you did that approach and you're able to make some sacrifices to make that happen than if you just continue renting for the next 20, 30 plus years. Now, I know this
Yeah.
might not work for everybody, but I have seen, and I know Al, you have seen as well, clients that you might not necessarily think that could make this happen based on their situation, but they did, and they were able to make this happen for their family and buy their first place and be completely content and happy, and they're just, yeah, they're bettering their lives for themselves and their family and their family in the future. So
Mhm. Joey, let me ask you another question. You make fantastic points, and all the numbers sound great, and that's logical. But let's talk about, like, let's put the numbers aside for a second, because some people don't necessarily concern themselves with the numbers. They're more
right.
feeling people, right? Like, I'm more of a feeling person. I like to feel good about the decisions I make, and I like to look at the other benefits outside just the financial benefits.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Americans are like that. A lot of people
Yeah.
in general are like that. So have you noticed the last couple of years, any of your clients that are renting call you that now want to purchase, and the motivation for that decision to purchase was because their landlord decided to sell the house?
Right. Oh,
Totally
definitely.
out of their control.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that a lot right now over the last couple months, and I've noticed that being a theme over the last 2 years, actually, just because of where the market's going. But especially right now, I'm having a lot of my clients that are renting having those conversations with me. And hey, is it now a good time to buy? Where I heard interest rates are low, should I take advantage of that? But yes, yeah, people are having to move out, and I have a client right now that he had his tenant move out, and he is selling the property just because he wanted to take advantage of where the market's at.
Wow. Yeah, I get a lot of those calls too. So I was just curious if you've seen a lot
Yeah.
of them. There's a lot of other benefits, obviously, to purchasing, such as pride of ownership. Like, I'm that guy that loves to do DIY projects at home. My wife is too. Like,
There you
we'll
go.
just go home and we'll decide one weekend, especially in quarantine life that we've been in for the last few months, that we're going to rearrange everything. And we're
Right.
going to add, this to
You'll
the
come over to my
backyard.
house this weekend.
Is your house all torn apart? Doing yeah. Sounds about right. But that's just the reality. As a
Yeah.
tenant, you don't have the flexibility to make those decisions yourself.
Right.
So
For
it's
sure.
not your property. You have to answer to a landlord. When you buy your own property, whether it's a condo, a townhouse, or a single family home, there's that pride of ownership that you get home. You're like,
Yeah.
this is my home.
Right.
If I want to run around naked, I can do it. Right. If I want to paint the walls pink and blue, I
Right.
can do it. And so that's one
My
of the
house. I
my
can do it.
house.
I don't have
That's
to
right.
call my landlord to have a cat or to have a dog. I
Yeah,
can do it if I want to.
that's right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think for a second, I know we've talked about, you mentioned it a couple of times too, that maybe diversifying is a good option. And I think you and I talk about this a lot off of calls on personal notes of like investments and
Yeah.
retirement strategies and things like that. And so I'll state real quick that both Joey and I really strongly believe that diversifying your portfolio is crucial. You cannot, and Joey mentioned it a few times, you can't just throw all your eggs in one basket with a real estate property or just 401k.
Right.
Like, you've got to diversify, because the markets don't ebb and flow the exact same way. Meaning, equities market, like if you look at stocks the last 2 months, now granted we're going through a global pandemic, which is an exception to a lot of what we've seen in equities market, but stocks have taken a big hit the last 2 months. If you look at real estate prices south of $1 million in Southern California, we haven't seen a blip in drop in prices. Like, I have not seen anything. I've seen prices climb, because supply and demand concept is still heavily intact right now. You've got a very short supply of properties and a high demand. So it's keeping values intact, even as people are losing their jobs right now with this pandemic. So that's a huge piece that if all of your money was in the equities market, and to your point, Joey, if I was getting ready to retire and I had $1 million sitting in the stock market and I want to retire in 6 months, I would seriously have to reconsider my retirement plans.
Now we're 700,000.
Right. It's like, dude, but if you had a property, if you had 3 or 4 single family homes and you decided to cash those out today and they're south of $1 million in price point,
Right.
You'd be getting top dollar. Right.
Exactly. Right.
Life
And
insurance policies,
on taking money from your retirement account, and
yeah.
That's kind of what my thinking was, because I always like to compare, okay, what would I do to try to operate in this space and not get hit hard in a situation like this, I mean, obviously you can't be perfect, but, we can learn as to what's happening now. And I think what's happening now is even more of a reason why to consider building your wealth through real estate during a time like this, because what you just said, I haven't noticed home values go down at all. If anything, they're either staying the same or slightly going up in some areas. And we're still seeing some multiple offers on properties on the right home.
We're seeing a lot, dude. I'm seeing it almost on every offer we have going out.
Yeah. Right. So that's still going through, this pandemic with COVID-19 and just everything crazy that's going on. So, that was all of my, points on building your net worth through real estate. Al, do you have any other points that you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
The only thing I'll touch on is that the first two things that you'd ask, the first thing you'd ask me was the top couple of reasons that people won't purchase. One of them was down payment, the other was credit. And I'll touch on this for just a sec, because there's a lot of myths going around the industry to consumers around how much you have to put down and what credit scores you need to have and everything. These days you can buy a house. If you're a veteran, military veteran, you can buy a house with 100% financing. No problem, no questions asked. If you are not a military veteran, you can still obtain financing for home purchases, and you can put as little as 3 to 3.5% down, which is not that much money. Like Joey used an example a few minutes ago where his client purchased 7 years ago and he put 5% down. And he built a ton of equity in that home over 7 years with a very, very small investment. So you guys have the ability to do that. Every product offering for lenders has different guidelines with that. And that's the big reason that we go through pre-approvals. Like clients will ask me, they'll tell me, hey, Al, I'll call you when I find a property. And I always say, please don't call me when you find the property. Call me before, for a couple of reasons. One, we got to make sure this thing's within your budget, number one, and you can afford and you feel comfortable with the house. Two, if you don't, and you find this property that you love, you just got your hopes up, and you probably don't want to break the news to your significant other that you can't get the house after you showed that to them because it's not within your budget. So you just want to get the numbers in line, make sure you're comfortable for what you're looking for. And then credit, there's quite literally thousands, tens of thousands of different scenarios with credit that we've seen over the last 10, 11 years. And credit's the one thing that's the most misconstrued in our entire industry. People don't understand it. You gotta understand the credit reporting system, nobody teaches us this. You're taught it through the school of hard knocks. And the reason I know so much about credit is because I've analyzed credit for such a long time, for a third of my entire life, and I've realized that it's a game. There's a way to win the game of credit and there's a way to lose. Most people learn how to lose a game of credit because they don't take the time to understand it. But when you go through a consultation, you go through a pre-approval, we're gonna walk you through what it looks like on your credit. Are there any red flags that are gonna prevent you from qualifying? But maybe there's nothing preventing you from qualifying. Maybe there's something we can do just to get you a better interest rate. We go through those things during your pre-approval to set you up to win. So I wouldn't let that be the reason why you decide not to at least have a conversation with us or to somebody, whether you decide to work with Joey and myself or not, have a conversation with somebody that's a professional in the industry, not your aunt and uncle that bought 2 houses over the last 30 years, because we hear that all the time. You talk to a real estate agent and a mortgage lender that have very consistent production, that know what they're talking about, to give you guidance on what is in your best interest and what's not. So I just encourage you, if there's any desire at all for you to decide to pull the trigger to buy at some point in the next couple of years, have a conversation with us, because what we discuss with you is going to be a game plan to set you and your family up to win, not to try to sell. Reality is, Joey and I both feel like we're really good salespeople, but there's no way we can sell somebody into spending a quarter, a half, $750,000. We're not that good at salespeople. What we can do, though, is give you the facts and empower you to make the decision that's best for you and your family. And so we're just asking for that opportunity to show you that something like that's possible for you. That's all.
Yeah. And we've had several clients, I mean, even just in the last 12 months, where we've been cultivating conversations and a relationship with them, getting them set up with a credit repair person, and just talking strategy 6 months to 12 months before we even start going through the official pre-approval letter,
Yeah.
and me showing them property. So, and then after 6 months to 12 months of work and education and working through some credit challenges, they're able to buy, so it's not that, oh, I have to call somebody until I find a home. We often say that you're almost too late, because typically
Yeah.
there's a good amount of competition, and we want to be prepared. And most people, especially when you're buying for the first time, you want to be prepared. So definitely reach out. We're happy to help. And I think one of the last things that I think we can talk about too is the tax benefits, right?
Yeah.
And before tax benefits, there was one last thing about buying your first property. I like to remind everybody that your first property, again, doesn't have to be your dream house. It's okay to start small and then work your way up. It is fairly common for clients that I am working with, and maybe you too, Al, where they want to get the big single family home in the gated community with a pool. And that's a great vision. That's a great goal. That's my goal too. That's Al's goal as well. But your first property does not have to be that. I would just highly recommend start small and then continue working your way up. But going back to tax, the government, oddly enough, really rewards homeowners and landlords. And so there's plenty of tax savings and tax incentives for people who own 1, 2, 3 plus properties of real estate that can help avoid some tax liability. And so that would probably be the last thing that I would throw in there. We don't have to go too much into the specifics because we're not tax experts, but there definitely are a lot of tax incentives for people that own real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think to your point, like when we go through a comparison for first-time home buyers on rent versus mortgage payment. So in that example from earlier, $2,400 rent versus a $3,000 mortgage payment, that's the raw numbers. After the tax incentive Joey's talking about, that payment ends up being a fair bit lower when you compare it to renting versus owning. So there are benefits, both tangible and intangible. And my sincerest desire is that whatever objection you have built in your head around why you wouldn't purchase, as long as it's not related to your actual physical capacity to live in the property right now, explore it, because the numbers I think are going to pleasantly surprise you. When you take out the amount of money that you pay on the principal of the mortgage, which is going straight into the piggy bank of your home for retirement, and the tax incentives, your what we call your burning number, what you burn away on your mortgage payment, is in 95% of cases lower than what you burn away in renting. So we'll show you those numbers obviously as we go through it, but that's huge. Tax incentives are definitely designed for American families to win when it comes to purchasing a home.
Exactly. And I'll leave everybody with this, you're either paying your own mortgage or somebody else's mortgage. Your land, just like that one client of mine that bought 7 years ago, the tenant that's in there is paying the landlord's, my client's, mortgage off for him. And at the end of the day is making some money each month. So
Awesome.
if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I hope this was helpful. Our information will be below, but thank you very much for watching.
Have a great day. Take care.